Hi, Derek Dunn here. So I have to do a podcast about this because it happened recently, and this event inspired me to talk about something that I was passionate about as a kid, something I really liked watching on TV and then later on in person, at least a couple of times anyway. Before I start in with the reason why, I want to start off with a little bit of background first. And so I do have my notes in front of me, by the way, too. So don't mind me if I'm looking up and down here. Um, in the 1990s, as a kid growing up, I was a big NASCAR fan. My favorite driver was Jeff Gordon when he drove the number 24 rainbow colored DuPont car. My mom was a Terry Labonte fan. You may remember Terry Labonte driving number 5 at Kellogg's Corn Flakes. My dad didn't really care about NASCAR all that much, so mom and I said we just picked a random driver and said you're a Mike Skinner fan. So, um, the best NASCAR race. If someone were to ask me, what was your favorite? What was the best NASCAR race you watched on television live? It would have to be back in 1999, February of that year, Daytona 500. Jeff Gordon won that race, and he held off both Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Mike Skinner. Now, the reason why that was a huge win for Gordon was, and I think one of the biggest wins of his career even, was because Earnhardt and Skinner were with Richard Childress Racing while Gordon raced for Hendrick Motorsports. To be in a situation where it's a big race on a national and global scale, and it's 1 against 2 where the odds are against you and yet you still win. I think that was a big victory for Gordon and in his career. Um, I don't, and speaking from a video game sense, I like to do a podcast on video games later on, but I didn't have a Sega or a PlayStation growing up. I didn't even have a Nintendo. I did get a Windows 98. And I'll talk about the computer in another podcast. But there was a video game that came out, and it was called NASCAR 98. And if I was at a cousin's house, I would play it. There was nothing like racing down the backstretch of Talladega and racing and listening to Molly Hatchet's Flirting with Disaster playing. And it's kind of gives you the feeling years later when I would play Grand Theft Auto 5 and I'd be cruising down the freeway in San Andreas, Los Santos, and you hearing Waylon Jennings ain't living like this. So it was kind of like that kind of feeling. So let's fast forward to the present day and the reason why I like to do a podcast about this topic. So just recently on June 3rd, 2023, this was on a Saturday, I went to Wayne County Speedway. If you don't know where Wayne County Speedway is, it's located not exactly in Wayne City, Illinois, but just right between Wayne City and Interstate 64. It's out in the country, all right? It's along a highway. So I had been there a few times before, and I think this was actually the first time underneath the current owner I have been. Other times it was underneath different owners. But that night, there were 3 active NASCAR drivers that were going to be racing there, and they were Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, I didn't know until later at the time, I didn't know until later on, that Kyle Larson was there. I didn't see Kyle, but a friend of mine happened to see Kyle and got a photo with him. So Briscoe, Busch, Stenhouse Jr. all raced. Kyle Busch's son Brexton and Larson's son Owen raced too. Kyle Larson, as I mentioned, he was there but did not race. I managed to buy a pit pass for about $40, and I tell you what, it was money well spent. I could be in the pit area and the grandstand. So during this podcast, I'm going to be showing you some photos and videos. All these photos and videos were taken by me. And if you would like to have a photo or a video clip, please let me know. As they're owned by me, and you may have to pay a fee for it. So, but anyway, I got my photo with Briscoe, and I didn't get one with any of the other drivers. But I did get photos of Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So, Busch, he was, the first time I saw Kyle, he was toward the east end of the pit area, and he was around a car. He was talking to someone, and I happened to zoom in quite a bit on my phone to get a photo of him. And I think he was getting ready to hop into one of the race cars. And then later on, I happened to get one of him, and I'm guessing that's his son, Brexton, on the right. It looked to me that way. So I managed to get a photo of him when he was talking to someone, talking to the person over to his left, well, to his right, and the photo would be on the left side. So I managed to get a couple of photos of him. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I got a couple of photos. He was actually to my left in turns 1 and 2. I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. But he was over to my left watching the races, and also at one point he happened to look down on his phone. So he was looking ahead, and when I took the photo, he was looking down on his phone. So, but anyway, I managed to get a couple of photos of him. So, but I want to go ahead and say that to have 4 NASCAR drivers in attendance at a racetrack that it's not really big, it's a small dirt track where they have Hornets and wing sprints and junior wing sprints and mod lights. I think, and even a couple of their children, a couple of the drivers' children racing, I think it is a huge deal. I think it's a big thing. And Wayne City, this is my area. Wayne City is about 1,100 people, and the interstate is not far from there. I don't care where you're from. I don't care how big of a track in your area, whether it be, 3/8 of a mile or half a mile. I just think to have these guys come over and race in front of your eyes, I think it's an experience you'll never forget. I think it's a treat in itself. These are guys that you hear often. They're household names. You may have seen them on TV, whether like for an interview during a race or if they won a race, victory lane. So, a cool story to share. So I mentioned how I got a pit pass earlier, and I happened to be walking around the pit area, and I was right around Kyle Busch's trailer, and it was during one of the heat races, I think. I think Hot Laps had already concluded. The features had definitely not started yet. So yeah, it was the heats. That's right. It was the heats. I look up and I see this kid, and he's like standing on top of like the trailer bushes, and he literally just launched a drone from there. And now I could tell, I thought, is that the drone I'm thinking of? And see, I want to get this out there right now. I am an FAA licensed recreational pilot. I took the trust test. I can fly drones recreationally, so I know a lot about drones. And so to see someone with the drone in the area, I think it was pretty cool. So I hollered out, "Nice drone!" So a few minutes later, I'm walking around. I didn't stray very far because I was kind of looking around and also looking at the sky, thinking, "Okay, where's this drone at?" Because I'm curious where he flew it and where it was at. And then finally, I saw it coming in from the north, and he landed the drone just right in front of me, and I thought, "Ooh," and I didn't want to touch it, because I know this is not my drone, and I don't know if they wanted anyone to touch it. But the kid said, "Hey, could you grab my drone for me?" And I said, "Sure." So I grabbed his drone for him, and he said thanks. He said I was concerned that someone was going to run right over it or pick it up. So I kept an eye on it while he was coming down. Um, so we started talking about drones for a few minutes. He told me he's from Arizona, and I think his name started with a T. I want to say it was Trevor or Tanner or something like that. So if you happen to hear this podcast, I apologize for forgetting your first name. But he was from Arizona when he told me, and he told me about the drone that he was flying and talking about the battery life and how the weakness with drones. One of the weaknesses anyway is the battery life, the flight life, if you will. There are drones out there that fly about 30 minutes, and then there are some that fly, about 47 to 51 minutes, and even longer for that matter, depending on the drone you get. But anyway, but yeah, it was fascinating talking to him. I showed him, I told him I'm a drone pilot myself. I own a couple of drones, and I showed him a shelf cloud that I took with a drone recently, and he thought it was a really cool shot. So it was pretty cool that I got to touch Kyle Busch Motorsports drone. So it was pretty neat. Let's see. Okay, turns 1 and 2. This is an interesting story. So I got some photos and video, just being right there. Turns 1 and 2, and this happened during um, the hot laps as well as a few of the heat races. So I was standing right there getting some footage, and I don't know where it came from, but man, I felt this dirt clod just hit me right square in the head. I'm wearing a hat, and it hit like kind of like that top area where you see it kind of like a round circle. Yeah, it literally hit me right there, and ooh, it hurt. It stung, and I'm like, it didn't knock me out or anything, but I was like, I felt it for sure, no doubt. It was a stinger. Um, and then at some point, I looked over to my left. I saw Ricky Stenhouse, and he was watching the races, and they were slinging mud. The midgets and the wing sprints, they were slinging mud, and they were slinging the mud um, in a flurry so much that all of us just kind of, even Ricky Stenhouse, just kind of just walked down, to about the main drag where you'd have the racers, uh, leave the pit area to go into the track, and then after they're done racing, they go back to the pit area. So uh, it was just right there, and try to get away from the dirt a little bit. So that'd be turns 1 and 2. I don't think there was anything else other than I thought I got some pretty good footage from there. So then I finally found the people who I was hanging around with earlier, and so we were watching junior wing, the junior wing sprints. And if I get these divisions wrong, let me know. I'm used to the modified street stock and factory stock, but anyway, the junior wing cars, heat going on, and I look over to my left, and down the far end, I'm sitting about the right center of these bleachers, and down there on the left side on the far end is Kyle Busch, and he is actually watching his son Breck's race. So one of my friends, one of my coworkers, where I work at, her name is Carrie. I told Carrie, I said, "Hey, Kyle Busch is down there to our left," and we both got our phones out, and took a quick photo of him. But I thought it was great to see him, attending the race, supporting his son. I thought that was great. Um, and then fast forward to the feature of the junior wing, and Kyle Busch runs right by us. He goes all the way to near the entrance of turn 3, and I see him get his phone out, and he's flashing his phone and using a light to make a signal to Brex, trying to encourage him. And so Brex ended up finishing second in that feature. So while I was sitting at the for the backstretch, I managed to get a couple of accidents while I was filming. One of them, which play for you here, I as mentioned, I caught it on tape. I forgot the driver's first name. I think the last name is Mitchell, I think. But here's a clip of the accident, and then I'll show it to you in slow motion but I thought it was interesting that his left rear tire did like a hop. And it looks like it comes back down, and then you can see the car just kind of lift, and then it starts to roll over a couple of times. The driver that was behind him ran into, again, we'll say his name is Mitchell, ran into Mitchell's car, that is, and not really at a high speed either, but the other driver was able to slow down, it looked like to me. But thankfully, fortunately, Mitchell gave a thumbs up to the first responders that got there. The announcer announced that. And I tell you what, I've been to a lot of these dirt track races, and no matter what racetrack you're at, whether it be asphalt, dirt, whatever, slime even, um, you know, I give the utmost praise to the first responders, the track crew. Those guys are pros at what they do. They do an outstanding job. So I was glad to see the driver who rolled over again a couple of times and the driver who hit him. I'm glad to see that they walked out there unscathed. Another accident I caught tape was just a quick, brief spin around on turn two with, I think, one of the Hornets in the heat. So I'll wrap up my podcast with this, a few more things here. So I got there a little after 5. I left right around 11. I was starting to get tired. They were still racing feature races. I left after Brex finished second in his feature. The experience I had at Wayne County Speedway was great. I thought the staff was nice. I thought they were helpful, especially the woman at the gate who convinced me to get a pit pass. So I can see why she said it's worth the $40. I thought it was neat to watch active NASCAR drivers who you're used to seeing on TV racing dirt in person, and either be winged or Hornets, So I thought it was neat. I think they enjoyed the competition, having fun. And speaking of NASCAR drivers, I just happened to think of this. It was a few years ago at Wayne County Speedway when I was out there that I managed to get a photo with Kenny Wallace. And so here's that photo of Kenny and I at Wayne County Speedway. And I know the hat is pretty comfortable hat. So Panama Jack. But for these drivers to come over, they could have easily stayed in St. Louis. They could have just said, you know what, we're going to stay over in St. Louis for the night. But they decided to come here, put on, I thought, great racing display. I thought it was great to see. Also, a shout out to a couple of people who I saw that I haven't seen in a while. One is Paul Wilcoxon. He is with WSIL Channel 3 TV, based out of Carterville. I've known Paul for years when he was working in the newspaper business. Chase Briscoe is from his hometown in Mitchell, Indiana. So I thought it was great to see Paul and talk to him. And then Lucas Albert. Lucas is from my hometown of Fairfield, Illinois. Lucas works for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., taking photos, videos, is getting content. I saw Lucas in action, watched him in action, in the infield of the track and near the entrance and exit. I thought it was great seeing him just doing his thing in action, where I've seen his photos before, and he takes really good photos and really good video, but just to watch him do it in person for the first time, I thought that was neat. And in fact, years ago, Wayne County Speedway, I'll tell you one cool memory about it. Years ago, I actually announced a couple of races there, and I would like to do it again if given the opportunity. I would have to have like a list of the drivers and the heats and what's going on, and I know there was a couple of guys announcing the race that night for Dirt Vision, but it's if you ever get a chance to do PA announcing, I'd say go for it. I understand some people have the mic fright. But yeah, I would love to call a race with Lucas. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But I'm proud of that young man. I've known him for a long time. You can give him a follow at Grassroots Racing News. Again, it's Grassroots Racing News. Give Lucas a follow on there. He does a great job updating it with the content. And again, his photos and videos, they're outstanding. I think if you look at the quality and the shots that he gets, at the angles, it's pretty incredible. So that about wraps up this podcast. I enjoyed talking to you guys about racing. Again, I've been a racing fan um, for a pretty good chunk of my life. I like racing games. There are some that I need to play. I need to play some Forza. I need to play some classic Need for Speed. I used to play Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 all the time. Um, I also played NASCAR Racing 3, so I played some racing games back in the day, and I need to get back into doing it. I do have Mario Kart on a Nintendo Switch, but Mario Kart's a classic. You can't go wrong with that. But anyway, thanks very much for watching this podcast. I plan on doing more of these. They'll appear at random times on my channel. So again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, you can support me on Patreon as well. I appreciate all the help and support I can get on there. So I just built this home studio and put a lot of money into it. So, and along with the software that I've incorporated in for editing. So, any of that would be greatly appreciated. So, thanks for watching this podcast. We'll do it again another time. Thanks for watching and be safe. Have a wonderful rest of your day.